Steve has been growing since he was a little boy, according to his bio. He was doing African violets at 5, breeding them. At 7, he was into roses, and by 9, he'd found orchids. Now, my kids, grandkids in that age group, the only thing they want to do is not eat anything that's plant material. But he was growing it by then. He said at 9 he found orchids, and he had started with cattleyas, but because he had lighting and it was limited, he went to miniatures. I know what that's about. After he got out of college, he got his first home, had a small greenhouse, packed it out pretty quickly, or it was an attachment to his house, and then he moved to a greenhouse. Got all these little seedlings, little flasklings, and disaster struck when the temperature failed. He now has this wonderful greenhouse that's 3/4 of the greenhouse is underground, and it can maintain its temperature very well, and he's doing very well in that. Steve is an AOS judge. He's been chairperson for lots of things, including the Mid-American shows and everything else. He has had 50 awarded plant adventure. That's changed since you wrote this bio for me. Grows miscellaneous plants, but his passion is over cattleyas, and he does, in fact, do his own hybridizing and growing out of seedlings, and we have been the happy recipients of being able to buy them for a couple of years. At KOS, we have been very blessed to have him as a member for over 30 years. And he is just a great guy that helps us with everything and anything. And so if you give him a warm welcome, he is going to talk to us about Sarcochilus.
And now you want power, Stephen?
We had one. Did we change it?
All right, we're going to do a look at the projector ready to go and things like that. I did send out an email that most of you may have seen about the Mid-America Orchid Congress. Everybody here is a member of the Mid-America Orchid Congress. Okay? Part of your dues that you send in goes to Mid-America. They have, or they try to have 2 shows every year. Jeanette and I went up to the one in Cleveland, and the next one is going to be out in Kansas City. And Jeanette and I are not going to be able to make Kansas City. It's the 3rd weekend or the 4th weekend in October. Anybody who's interested, I can get you all the details. Kind of just wish that somebody from the KOS has some nice relatives out there, wants to go out and spend some time eating barbecue, talking to orchid people, buying orchids, and those kinds of things. Even if Jeanette and I were going, you're still welcome to go up. But one of the things I did kind of want to make you aware of is this is all part of us, and we are the only Orchid Congress still active in the United States. Okay? And we sponsor different trophies. We have conservation money that we donate to conservation groups around the world. We do concentrate on the United States and the Mid-American area, but we have donated to Mexico, Brazil, and other things around the world. We also are the ones who put together the show schedule. Okay, we take it for granted because we always have the show schedule. It's the Orchid Congress that puts that together. Okay. So, if somebody has a hankering, would like to go, this would be a good opportunity because, like I said, Jeanette and I most of the time go, but can't this time.
Send it to me, please. I'd like to go.
Okay. And as I said before, that Bird's Orchidarium is in Kansas City. One of the trips that you can go to is you get to go into Bird's Cave and see all the orchids being grown. And it's great barbecue. That's what I did last time with barbecue and steaks.
It's on your shirt. It's on your shirt, but it's attached here. So it's great.
It's on the screen.
It's October 26th through 28th.
And if you do go, know that they know us in this area. We are known for our fantastic food and hospitality. And the Mid-America is looking for people who have fantastic food and hospitality and are willing to sign up to host the Mid-America. So if you go up there, talk about this before you go up there, but they are looking for societies that are willing to either host or share in Mid-America.
We shared it with Lexington last time we hosted it.
Well, we've done it, I think 5 times. Cincinnati's done it about 6. It was in Cincinnati last year. But there's 2 ways of doing it. We can host it. In other words, we invite them to come down, or they'll just say they're going to come down here at the same time we are and just share that weekend with us. The biggest difference is they have an auction on Saturday nights. If we host them, okay, we get half the money.
Oh,
Yeah.
talk about a fundraiser.
Yeah, they will also loan us $1,500 in advance to pay for, upfront costs. We do have to pay that back. We would get half the proceeds from the auction. In Cleveland, it was like $2,800. So. All right, I think we're getting real close. Well, Cleveland there had 465 entries.
I'm just saying bigger, but it's the same idea.
Yeah, but they brought in people from Brazil to give talks. They brought people in from Hawaii to give talks. So it's a bigger and better show because there's a lot more money involved. Okay, what I'm going to talk about today. I know we have some new people here. This is not something you're going to walk and find on most of your sales tables yet. I'm hoping and thinking in 7 to 10 years, it will be very common on the sales tables, okay?
Here,
Just down, I think it's down.
yeah.
Sarcochilus.
Okay, so.
No?
Just do a left to right.
There we go. Okay. Sarcochilus. What I'm going to go through is a fairly standard presentation. We're going to talk about the history in this country, the history in Australia, which is where they're from. Why are they here now? Why am I up here talking about them? A little bit about where they're from and how to grow them, what to expect in the future, and what we can expect right now. So this is mostly going to be on growing, so we'll start with that. Okay, Sarcochilus in the U.S. They have been here in the United States for a long time. But typically it was a grower here, and a grower there, and a grower way over here. And what happened is, I would go over here and get a piece from this grower, and I would raise it up, and then I would give a piece to somebody else. So those same old pieces went round and around in the United States, okay? We really didn't have anybody going out there and trying to make it better and things like that. Even worse is none of us really took the time to figure out how to grow them, all right? They look like vandas, so we tried to grow them like vandas, okay? Go back just.
I don't know how to go up. There it is. Got it.
All right. There are about 28 Sarcochilus altogether. Don't worry about the other 25 of them. Okay, we're going to talk about 4. The ones we saw were were Sarcochilus hartmanii. That's this one here. Perfect little round flowers, nice little red center, yellow in the lip. Lots of flowers, inflorescences go up. Beautiful. You cannot really improve on Sarcochilus hartmanii. It's nearly perfect. There was another one called falcatus. Here. It's bigger, but it didn't last as long. It was more open, and the inflorescences dropped. So nobody really thought that was a whole lot of things to worry about, but it was out there. And then there was Fitzgeraldii. Kind of looked like a poor cousin to hartmanii over here. It did have the nice red center, but the flowers were small. Each individual flower only lasted 2 or 3 days. Okay, so it was kind of ho-hum. I have cute little white flowers. All right, that's why nobody did anything with them. They were cute little white flowers. All right, now we'll go. Okay, so we kind of talked about this. There were people growing these, but not very many. In the United States, we talked about most of the people, most of the breeders, most of the people who sell orchids had seen them, but they were just cute little white flowers, so what? And again, we talked about the growing conditions. There was a lot of misinformation, okay? Some of that was on purpose, okay? But basically, these cute little white flowers here in the United States just kind of hung on. I had one for about 25 years. I think when you said you've had a couple, so they're happening around here. So next. I have one growing for about 25 years, but I grew it badly, I must admit. Okay? And again, I didn't research it well enough. Back in those days, you had books. Okay? And
No internet.
yeah, no internet. You had to go flipping through the channels, and you know my cat ears kept on coming to the top of the page, and I paid more attention to them. Okay, I grew hartmanii on plaques, and as I will show you in a little while, that's probably the hardest way to grow them. But I was successful. All right, next.
Ooh, that's
Okay. Is that a cute little white thing? All right. All right, let's think about that. That one has all 3 of those little white ones in it. Nope, doesn't have the 4th one in it. All right, next. Okay, now we're going to go to the other side of the earth, okay? This is Australia. They are very, very prideful. They really love their native orchids, including dendrobiums and a number of other ones. Since most people in Australia live where these are grown, okay, if you wanted one, you went out in the woods, picked it up, and took it home. Okay? Everybody could have one. Many orchid shows now down there are centered around these Sarcochilus. Here we go, Phalaenopsis season, Cattleya season, things like that. Those are all of theirs around the Sarcochilus season. Most breeding efforts were centered on hartmanii and Fitzgeraldii, and they got a little bit bigger, a little bit rounded, and had more flowers, but basically they were still white with red spots. Then came the pinks. This is the 4th one. This one is literally, the plant is only this tall when it's full grown. The flowers are maybe 3/8 of an inch across, but they're pink. And that little dose of pink introduced into those whites was a godsend. It really improved everything that was going forward.
That's great.
Now we got something other than cute little white things. All right, next. Now they're cute and spectacular. Let's go. So most breeders in Australia were and still are about like me. Just mom and pops who go take their toothpick out there and they do a little bit of hybridizing and things like that. All right? I'm not selling thousands of these things. I'm selling tens of these things, okay? And this happened all over Australia. You gotta remember that Australia is about the size of the United States, but it has the population of New Jersey, okay? And it's spread out all the way around the coast. Okay. About 7 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Scott Barry, who owns a company called Burrito Orchids. And as you'll see in this talk, and anytime you go to buy these things, anytime you see Cool Nora, okay, in the name, that's one of Scott Barry's. Okay? So it'll be Cool Nora Sizzle, Cool Nora Vibrance, whatever. Those are all coming from Scott Barry. After he retired, he started going around the countries, around the world, giving talks on Sarcochilus. And he'd take a flask or two with him. Everywhere he went, he sold out. He goes, hey, this is kind of neat. So the next time he'd take more flasks, and he'd sell out. He'd take more flasks and sell out. He said, hey, I got onto something here. Well, he started working with people in different countries, and in this country, he started working with Sunset Valley Orchids, and I have a good relationship with Sunset Valley Orchids, so everything that he can't sell, I take. Okay, so he buys 100 flasks, grows them out. He says, okay, I only want to keep 100 of this one. I got 110. Well, I get those 10. The next one, he may want 100, and he has 150. So I get those 50. All right? Kind of a good relationship because I'm not investing the time, okay, and I'm still getting the good orchids. There's another place, Alan Koch. He bought a company called Wolf Orchids. It was a mom and pop, but it was a pretty good sized one. He bought all of their stock. None of those orchids that I know of have made it to this country yet. They're still in Australia. They're still being bred, and I guess he's selling them in Australia. Just hasn't brought it to this country yet. So we're getting some inroads now. Next. Okay, so this is Australia. Again, about as big as the United States. Not quite close enough though. About 80% of the population is right here. The rest of it is around here. So 80% of your population's here. Almost all of your Sarcochilus are right here. Okay, next.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Right here, there's a mountain range. And what happens is the breezes come off the ocean, climb the mountain range. As they're climbing up the mountain range, they cool off in rain. Okay? So that's real good for all the orchids here, but over here it's desert. All the way across the country. That's why there's no people in there. So, this is where the orchids are, this is where the people are. If you were to go into those mountains and you go up the gullies where all the streams are and everything else, this is where you're going to find the Sarcochilus. They grow in the deep shade, mostly on the bottom parts of branches. Okay? And we're talking about now, this is a relative of the Vanda, and yet we're talking about deep shade. You know of another Vanda relative that likes shade? Phalaenopsis. Okay? Now though, remember we're saying we're on that mountain though. What's the other thing about mountains? As you go up the mountains, it gets cool. So now we're talking about deep shade and cool. So never thought about that for Vandas, did we? Well, Neophenicia falcata, okay. Some of you know that one. The little white one out there smells so pretty. Okay. Next. But they're on the bottom sides of branches. Next. There's one in bloom. And again, can't really tell if it's on the bottom side, but it's certainly not on top where it's trying to gain a lot of sun. Next. Okay, so this is what we've learned a little bit about where they want. First, these are low light. And again, for the most part, we're talking about 1,700 foot candles down to 650 foot candles. For those people who don't have a little photometer and everything else, 1700 to 1500 is a very comfortable reading light, okay? This is where you're growing your paths and your phalaenopsis right now. 650 foot candles, most likely you'd have to turn the light on to be able to read. Okay? I will tell you from experience, they're not thriving at 650 foot candles. They are surviving at 650 foot candles. So I'm not going to suggest that that's where they should go. I'm just saying they will survive that low. Okay? And again, pretty much about like your phalaenopsis, maybe even slightly less. They grow in these gullies away from the direct sun, under the bush, under the heavy trees. In Australia, those people who do grow them, they'll have their cattleyas and dendrobiums on their bench, and the sarcocilus are underneath the bench. And those people who only grow sarcochilus are running about 80% shade cloth. Okay, most of us are running 60 to 70% shade cloth for our phalaenopsis, maybe 50% shade cloth for our cattleyas. So running 80% shade cloth, that's quite dark. Okay. And I put this in here, even though I'm having a little bit of hesitancy now. Everybody wants that orchid that will grow in the north window. My experience is now saying yes, they will grow there, but I don't think they're going to have a lot of luck in blooming it there. So I'm going to take this one out later on, but I almost had one for a north window. Okay, next. All right, again, they're up into the mountains, so they really are more cool. They really don't like temperatures above the upper 80s. So if you have a greenhouse, it's darn near impossible to keep it out of the 90s or 100s. Okay? These are actually easier for people in a house and really much easier for people who grow in the basement. Okay? Again, little comparisons here for those people who are new. I'm using orchids that are relatively common being grown. People understand how to grow them. So in this regard, they're not like your cousins, the phalaenopsis. Okay, don't want it warm. They more like your monolith paths. Okay, which are a little bit more cool growing. If you do have a greenhouse like I do, I have to grow them in my cool house. Now my cool house does get into the 90s, but at night it drops all the way back down into the 60s every single night. All right, so that's how I are able to grow them, is at that drop at night. And again, winters, if you grow them warm, you really want to winter them cool, because it's going to be allow them a chance to strengthen up. You want some pretty pictures, we'll get to the pretty pictures. All right, since they are in the Vanda family, they do like a lot of water, and they grow all year round. Okay, so they want to have an open media and lots of moisture. So I water them twice a week. But if you know what I grow in, it's that ground up tires. All right, those roots are not going to rot in that ground up tires watering twice a week. If you are a path grower and used to having things in a path mix, the Australians grow it in their path mix like that, but add about 50% granite pebbles to it. So think about aquarium gravel. So it's half mix, half aquarium gravel. But they repot every single year. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. So I'm going to grow it my regular way and water twice a week. But that's an option for you if you're more used to the path type growing. All right. For most people in the house, stay with it twice a week, because I found that the house is a little drier, and I've seen it needs the humidity as well. So, okay, next. The other thing is, most of us stop or nearly stop fertilizing in the wintertime. These want to continue fertilizing the year round. About like all the other orchids and everything else, maybe slightly high in nitrogen, but a good balanced one. You know, all the way across 10, 10, 10 is fantastic. If you want to use a 15, 10, 10 or something like that, that's fine too. Next. Most of the other things, pretty much like all the other orchids we're going to tell you about, they like the high humidity, is 50 to 60% is ideal. The more air movement, the better. I've not had much trouble with bugs. The only one I've had so far, and everybody has had, is scale.
I hate those things.
Scale seems to like everything, so, but I have not had mealybugs, knock on wood. Anyway, and again, if you're growing it in that path mix, repotting regularly. If you have a more open mix, fill your media and repot as necessary. Next.
What's the bottom?
Oh, propagation. If you saw some of these over here, let me just grab one real quick. This is one plant, and this plant came out of Flask in 2011. Okay, so it's 6 years. This one is in this talk, and it has already bloomed. Okay? If you were to want to propagate this, make sure it has at least 3 fans when you break it up. Okay? So, but basically that's as tall as these plants are going to get. So that will stay in a house, on a windowsill, under lights very easily. And I'll show you this one when we get to it. Okay, next. Blooming. Again, if you're growing them warm during the summertime, please cool them off in the wintertime. That cool temperature seems to be a real bonus for them. But like Phalaenopsis, okay, a lot of times you don't have to do anything special. But you might as well do it if you have the options. Keep it cool. The other thing is these do require those short days in the wintertime. So if you do grow them under lights, you do want to change your light schedule so you have short or long nights, short days in the wintertime. And they bloom really, I started at the 1st of March, and the last one's dropped off about 2 weeks ago. So I got a little earlier than what they're telling me, so let's say March to May instead of April to May. Okay, next. Okay, Sarcochilus grow rapidly. Okay, 7 years. It's a specimen plant. Flask to bloom in 2 to 3 years. Nice showy plants, 5 to 7. Specimens in 10. And I'll show you some in a little while that will make you appreciate it. How's that one?
Wow, that is,
Now that's that cute little white one, right?
yeah.
It's pretty nice. All right. What about that one?
That's a good
And we're talking about now, these are in probably 10-inch pots, okay? So it's a good sized pot, but your reward is pretty nice.
How old is that plant,
I didn't grow it, so I can't swear to it. I would say it's probably 10, 12 years old. Okay. All right, so we'll start at the beginning of the whites. The whites have been around for a long time. The 3 species that they mostly used were all white. And so they would use Hartmannii and Fitzgeraldii and made Fitzhart. Okay, it wasn't real hard to figure it out. And then they'd go back to Hartmannii, or they'd go back to Fitzgeraldii, and you'd have Heidi, or you'd have Madge. And then they'd go back to Hartmannii and go to it just went back and forth between those 3. And they got pretty good size, very round, very clean colors. And if you only had one to start with, I would say start with one of the whites, okay? These have been around longest, they're more standard, more consistent, okay? Next, there's a few of what we consider the whites. This is what they call the post-egg style. And it is the most sought after in Australia. And it's actually, this is the red color that should be here, but it's the alba form. Okay? Remember that when we get into the colors. Okay? Okay, the pinks. Where do pinks come from? Came from that little pink thing, remember? So now we're talking about some fantastic colors, but the plants are a little bit smaller and the flowers are significantly smaller. Where the whites might be the size of a quarter, these may be the size of a nickel. Okay? But they make up for it in color. So, next. Okay, next. The reds. We sell more reds in this country than they do in Australia. Scott Barry takes all his reds and sends them over here because the Australians are lukewarm about the red colors. And they still like their whites. We love reds. So we are taking all the flasks out of Australia, bringing them over here, and we've got some pretty nice ones. Now, red color is recessive, which means you have to have a recessive red on this side, a recessive red on this side, put them together to be able to call it red, or before it comes out red. If you have a dominant, what color will it be? It'll be white or pink. Okay? So, if you buy a plant that's supposed to be red and it comes out white or pink, don't be surprised. It's going to happen. Now, they're trying to build strains that'll come red each time, and they're getting better and better and better. But on reds in particular, and in yellows, don't be surprised if you get something that looks totally different. Okay? Because it still wants to go back to that white. Okay? Next. Here's a few of the reds. And I have one almost that good. All right, next. Yellows and oranges. All right, these are brand new. And we're talking in the last 4 or 5 years until we've actually seen any yellows and oranges. Now remember me telling you about that little yellow center? It was actually an albino red. So now we have reds and then made them albino. So how many types of albinoism do you have to get to be able to get to the yellows and oranges? It's very fleeting at this point. If you want the yellows and everything else, you're going to have to buy a bunch, hope that you get some. But again, another 5-10 years, we'll be fine. The Australians do like the yellows, so it's hard to get some of those out of Australia. The oranges here, this is albino red, but has pink in the background. Pink didn't turn albino, but that's how you get the orange. So these here, again, particularly in the yellows, you're going to get pinks, you're going to get reds, you're going to get whites. It's going to be pretty. You just may not get yellow. Okay, next. Okay. You're going over there and looking for those whites, look for Fitzhart, Madge, or Heidi. Again, good, solid breeding, come true pretty much all the time. You're looking for pinks, look for Zoe, Bonanza, and Sweetheart. You're looking for reds, Fairy and Colnara Womping. Another thing is if you see Bunyip, okay, Bunyip is kind of an ugly orangey red rust color. It's not quite anything, okay? albinos in the background. So when you breed it on to a red or a yellow or things like that, it makes more flowers, bigger flowers, and most of the time they'll come out the yellows and reds. But by itself, it's kind of, but when used in breeding, is something pretty nice. The yellows look for Parma and Roberta. And again, some pinks, particularly red and yellow hybrids, will be a lot like the Thelumnias, the Equitalincidiums. They may look very different from each other, sometimes nothing like the parents, but most will be very pretty and colorful. There is a hybrid out there they call Kaleidoscope. And I've seen a picture of 50 clones out of one seed pod. They were everything from a pure white to a pure red to a pure pink. There were yellows in there were pinks in there were spots in there were solids in there. It was everything in the kitchen sink was thrown into one hybrid. And if you ever just want to have one hybrid and have 20 different colors, Sarcochilus Kaleidoscope. Okay. Now these are just a few of mine. So this is Sherry Snow by Sweetheart. This would be a nice pink. And he's just bloomed March to April this year. Next. This is Fire Mist by Bun Yip. Remember Bun Yip is that one that can be kind of an odd color, but you're breeding it for the size of the flowers. Here's a nice Heidi. Next. Isn't that a nice red?
Yeah.
That's Vibrance times Culnura Ripple by Bun Yip. This is better in person than it is on here. Mischief. It's really got a white background with a nice red over the top. So in the picture, it kind of lit a little bit, but I think it's still pretty nice. Next. I sold a couple of these to a guy in Lexington. These are the first two that he bloomed out and sent me pictures of. So, okay, species. If you had a look over there, you didn't see any Hartmannii eyes, any falcatas, Fitzgeraldi eyes, or Cecilias. And the reason is all the good ones are still in Australia. One thing that I can say about the Australians is they love their species, and they will not share them. And even though they have been breeding these things and making really nice ones for a long, long time, they will not sell them to us. And many of us have tried, and it's just part of their personal pride. And I guess in some ways I can understand that, but I'd love for you to share at least a few of them. And Gold Country, since he bought out that wolf place down in Australia, he did get some of the species, okay, part of that deal. But again, I haven't seen them in this country, so I don't know when they're coming. They will get to this country at some point, okay? But right now, if you see one for sale in this country, I would buy it, but don't expect top-notch material yet. Okay, next. Where to buy? Again, I work in conjunction with Sunset Valley Orchids, and he buys them almost exclusively in flask. He's trying to make some of his own hybrids, so am I. Gold Country bought out Wolf Orchid Culture in Australia. Again, I have not seen any in this country yet. So I don't know whether he's building up supplies or just having a good enough time selling in Australia. Again, I work with Sunset Valley, and since I have a very small pool house, I work with New Vision Orchids, that's Russ Vernon, and he and I share back and forth. So, that was that was Burita, the Culnara place, and one of his shows. And remember, essentially, all of this started from cute little white things. All right. Questions? All right. Okay.
What color do you have over there on your table for sale?
I have white, pink, red, and a couple of yellow. The colors are on the name tags. Yes.
Okay, I'm new to this club,
Right.
and, excuse me, my phalaenopsis, I put them out of my deck in the summer and I pour them, and they do fine. Will these do fine the same way? They're in the shade.
Okay. The only thing I would caution is, just like this weekend, we're going to be up to about 95, 96 degrees. They really are not going to be happy. They'd be happier inside with you in the air conditioning.
Okay, and the phalaenopsis are okay to keep it in the heat?
Yeah, they're fine in the heat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes.
The little pot that you said had already bloomed, does it bloom again this
Yes.
year? Or?
Well, the bloom period is mostly within that first 2 to 3, or the 2 to 3 months, March and May. I will see every once in a while they'll turn around and rebloom in the fall. Okay, but it's kind of like I would call a bonus. It's not an expectation. So right now, your blooming period is going to be March to May. Okay, but that same plant will bloom on that same growth.
Oh, it doesn't have to have new growth to bloom?
No, it'll bloom on the same old growth. Yes. Okay, remember me going through the species real quick. If it has a lot of Fitzgeraldii, each individual flower may only last a week. But if you have 8 to 10 flowers on there, you might still have 6 to 8 weeks worth of flowers. If it has a lot of Hartmannii, each individual flower may last 4 to 5 weeks. So you might get, almost 3 months out of a Hartmannii hybrid. And Ceciliae, ones I have 2 small Ceciliaes, and they've been in bloom for 2 months right now. Oh, FYI, I did get some Ceciliaes. I don't know how good they are. Ceciliaes, the Australians say you can't grow them. And they go out into the woods and bring back new ones every year because they can't grow them. So we'll see. All right. Okay.
Do you have any pictures of the bunyip? Because I'm really interested in that one. And all I'm finding on Google is the things that have it as one of the parents.
Right. And again, the reason is you're going to have difficulty finding bunyip because it's kind of ugly. It's not really, really ugly, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like unspectacular. For all the good it does, and if you're finding it as a parent, they're using it for more flowers, bigger flowers, and to keep the color up. But by itself, it doesn't look like that.
I really want to see it just by itself, though.
Okay. You can find them on the internet. I don't know that I have a picture, but just keep on looking. You can find them.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, we're going to do a little